We all experience the gap. You know what I'm talking about. There is a profound gap in our world between what is and what we wish or hope or believe somehow could be. We might see it when we look out into the world. We see wars, we see poverty, abuse, brokenness and darkness of just about every kind in the world. But we also see it when we look in here. Who among us doesn't long for more sometimes, to be more loving, to be more peaceful, more joyful, more happy, or less selfish, less angry, less worried, less confused? The gap runs throughout all of creation, and it goes to our very core. And we try to fill that gap with things that don't satisfy, or we try to turn away from it and numb ourselves to it and pretend that it's not there. Or maybe we try through strenuous effort to close the gap and just make the world a better place and just fix what is broken in us. And it doesn't work. And it's against this backdrop of the gap that I want to reflect just a little bit on the good news of our faith in Jesus Christ. And the first point is this, that tough as it is to believe this, we believe in a good God who didn't create the gap. The gap is ultimately a result of what we would call sin, the brokenness of humanity choosing against the goodness and love that we were created for. To be made in God's image means to have the choice to love, and to have the choice to love means to have the choice to say no. And from the beginning and through today, the brokenness of our world is a result of turning away from love. But we have a good God of rescue who doesn't leave his creatures abandoned, and from the beginning has reached out in mercy and in love to show them the way, to call them by name, and to form a people for himself, to bring back into his ways. And in the fullness of time, of course, God got this through to us and accomplished something for us that we couldn't do on our own when he sent Jesus, his own self, plunging into this world, into the gap, into the depths of the gap, all the way to death. And by rising again, he bridged that gap, fundamentally opening up the way into God's ways and God's freedom that we couldn't do on our own. And that life of Christ gets mediated to us through the church, through the sacraments, through the community of faith, through the scriptures in so many ways. As we grow in that, he starts to close the gaps in us. He starts to transform us into new people. And that is a process that we grow into over the course of our lives. But what about the areas that remain still in the gap? We look around at the world, and now in the world and in our hearts, there's still much work to be done. Well, always remember, we are loved in the gap, even here, even now. Even in the most painful of gaps, we are never without the love of God. And as he works that transformation in us, this is amazing. He also sends us out into the world to stand in the gap, to stand in the gaps of our world. Isaiah called the people of Israel repairer of the breach. When they would follow the Lord's will, they would go out into the gaps of the world and be salt and be light and be truth and be goodness in a hurting world. And in Christ, through the grace of God, that is exactly our call and is exactly what we do in him. Imperfectly, even as we are being transformed, we get to participate in filling in the gaps of this world. What an awesome vocation that is, and what a great God we have. So where do you see the gap? Where do you see the gap in the world? Where do you feel the gap in here? And how is the Lord working in you to transform you and to close the gaps in your life? And where is he loving you even in the gaps that remain? And how is he calling you out to be a repairer of the breach?